Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very welcome here today, and in particularly those of you joining us online for our event here, brought to you with Euractiv and DG RTD from the European Commission. Today's event is called Choose Europe. We're talking about the world-class research and technology infrastructures available here in Europe. And of course, we are going to touch on the recently published European strategy on research and technology infrastructures and how they relate to the future of Europe, in particular how they can help us deliver on the twin transitions, the digital and green transitions, help develop world-class medtech, and also build into competitiveness and European sovereignty, all the high and laudable aims that we see and the objectives for the European Commission and for Europe as a whole. So we're bringing together today many people who are not necessarily the usual research and innovation audience. It's people who are interested in the policy, people who are interested in the business, and people who are interested in where we can really go in terms of Europe's long-term strategy. We will start with a keynote introduction, and then we will have our panel discussion. During that discussion, please feel free to ask questions of our panelists using Slido. You'll be able to see the QR code there on the screen. You can scan that with your smartphones. If you're online, of course, you can just simply type into the text box, or if you want to navigate directly with your browser, you can go to slido.com and put in the code EU Research. So first of all, as I promised, to start us off, a man who knows all about this, Director Jean-David Malo from the Directorate General for Research and Innovation, who leads the European Research Area and Innovation. Please, a warm welcome.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure for me to be here, and many thanks, of course, for the support of Euractiv and of the communication unit of DG Ltd, as well as my team dealing with research infrastructure and colleagues dealing with technology infrastructure in another directorate of DG Ltd. As mentioned by Jennifer in her introductory speech, this strategy is clearly a milestone for our overarching policy objective today. Our objective is clearly for Europe to consolidate its position as a destination of choice for both scientific excellence and economic competitiveness, and to be able to compete with a world which is moving as quickly as never, in particular as far as the tech race is concerned. You know that it is a key priority of our commissioner, Mrs. Ekaterina Zarayeva, and as I will show you, it's closely, in fact, in relation with a number of other initiatives. And in order to understand really what is the purpose of this initiative, it's important also to position itself to other initiatives, what I will do during my speech. Maybe first, let's define what we are talking about. What are research infrastructure and what are technology infrastructure? Because in reality, some entities are both in the same time, but some are more on the side of research infrastructure or more on the side of technology infrastructure, and it explains why they are governed differently, why they have different objectives. So maybe important as an introduction to recall, in fact, who they are and what are their primary purpose. So the primary purpose of research infrastructures is, in fact, to pursue scientific excellence and to ensure, therefore, that researchers, engineers have access to state-of-the-art equipment, laboratories, and digital resources. This is how you could sum up the purpose of a research infrastructure. Technology infrastructure, primary focus, is mainly to enable and accelerate technological innovation towards societal or economic or market adoption. Here you are more talking about test beds, pilot line, clean rooms, so this kind of infrastructure, but a number of other possibilities are open here, which explain why, as you certainly have seen, for those who have read this strategy, it will be important to have a mapping of what could be technology infrastructure, while for research infrastructure, the work has been done already in the past. Now, why we consider this infrastructure so important for the competitiveness of the Union? First, and it's very important to highlight this, they are part of the same ecosystem. It's something that for the first time we have translated also in the proposal for the next framework program, where for the first time we are proposing to put together under the same program research infrastructure and technology infrastructure. Why? Because they are part of the same continuum and the same innovation ecosystem. They are a unique asset that we have in Europe and which is recognized worldwide. They enable incredible scientific progress, they drive innovation, and as such, they are creating data and results, or they are proposing services or equipment that can be absolutely essential for European competitiveness by connecting also talent, by connecting and by offering services across borders. They are, in this sense, absolutely strategic, in fact, for the scientific, technological, and industrial competitiveness of the Union, and as such, they are poles of attraction in the context of the Choose Europe initiative, which has the purpose to attract in Europe the best talent, the best entrepreneurs, the best researchers, the best engineers of the world, the ones who sometimes have left Europe in order to come back, but also the ones that are coming from other countries and which could find in Europe exceptional capacities. They are also, in the context of the numerous challenges we are confronted today, essential assets for promoting, in fact, the values of the Union in the context of the scientific diplomacy. And they are, as far as our competitiveness, both technological but also economic, is concerned, absolutely essential for our sovereignty. So we have their unique assets, but it's essential to improve the channeling, in fact, of breakthrough research that exists and that can be generated in these extraordinary infrastructures into innovation and economic impact. We should also ensure that they are open for any other stakeholders that could benefit from their knowledge, but also their facilities and equipment, and notably in the context of the current deep tech race, startups and scale-ups. It's not the first time, of course, that we are supporting infrastructures and notably research infrastructures. The Framework Program for Research and Innovation, which is called nowadays Horizon Europe, have in reality, and it is the 9th Framework Program, have supported, in fact, research infrastructures. I would not say from the very beginning, it would not be true, but very early in the frame of this framework program, and certainly have played a key role in the structuring, in fact, of the landscape of research infrastructures in the last 20 years. We made incredible progress in this context. We have been able to govern in a better way research infrastructures thanks to initiatives such as the European Strategic Forum for Research Infrastructures. We have now a good mapping of what are the key research infrastructures. We have launched a number of initiatives that have improved, in fact, the coordination among member states and associated countries in this domain. And I'm not afraid to say that this is certainly one of the most concrete achievements that we made in the context of the European research area. We are in this framework program supporting a number of initiative and action. I mean, we are notably supporting transnational access on the basis of excellence, allowing researchers all over Europe and associated countries to access clearly what are world-class facilities. We are supporting also infrastructure projects in their early implementation phase. We are also supporting a very important initiative, which is the European Open Science Cloud, on which I will come back in a minute, which could play a key role there also in the future, especially as far as data is concerned. And we are, in this context, fostering international cooperation with peers worldwide. As such, we have not yet an equivalent for technology infrastructure. But it became more and more evident that we were missing a concrete opportunity with technology infrastructure because of the demand which is coming up, especially in a world where the market is more and more driven by technology. And despite the fact that in the current Horizon Europe Cluster 4, for example, we have a number of initiatives that has been taken, we have not yet something similar, but the intention would be, of course, to go a step further. Now, as I said, all of this, in particular this strategy, but of course also our proposal for the next framework program in the next multi-financial framework for 2028-2034 is not coming out of the blue. It is based on evidence, it is based on consultation, it is based on discussions with key stakeholders, with key institutions. It is based on leading reports, and on this slide you have reference to certainly 3 very key reports, the Draghi, Letta and Ettore reports, which all converged in fact to the same message. Europe must act now. Europe must prioritize and invest in infrastructure for research and technology if it wants to secure its fifth freedom, if it wants to boost its competitiveness, and if it wants to attract talent. And if it doesn't do, I mean, Europe will not only continue to lag behind its main competitor, but may be confronted to a number of additional difficulties. And it is in this vein, in fact, that also our President, Ursula von der Leyen, insisted on the role that world-class infrastructures that we have in Europe can play in the context of the Choose Europe initiative. Now, this has been led by our commissioner, Katarina Zayareva, and has ended with a concrete strategy that we have adopted and published in the very first day of September this year, with some clear messages. And I would like to recall them, even if I have already a little bit touched a number of them, to explain better what are the actions that we intend to launch in order to build on the potentials that exist with our research and technology infrastructures. So, first message, these infrastructures are not only key assets recognized worldwide, but they are absolutely essential as catalysts enabling innovators, startups, and scale-ups to turn ID into market activities. Second, we must do anything that is relevant in order to build a real single market for research and innovation. And in this context, we need to consider that both research and technology infrastructure are part of exactly the same innovation ecosystem, from discovery to deployment, from laboratories to industry. Third, we have, in a world which is, as I said, more and more turbulent, where uncertainty exists more and more, where we nevertheless rely more and more on data, we have to ensure that our researchers, our innovators, our businesses can have access to trusted data, fair data, and on which we have hands-on or an easy access. And in this context, research and technology infrastructure can play also a key role. And last but not least, as mentioned by Commissioner Zayareva, but also by our President Ursula von der Leyen, we must also use the potential of research and technology infrastructure to attract the best talent of the world. To achieve this objective, it was necessary to identify what are the main barriers, the main bottlenecks that we still have today. So in a nutshell, you can consider that we have 6 main barriers or challenges ahead of us. First, and I already said a few words about it, while research infrastructure benefits from the strategic planning via the European Strategic Forum for Research Infrastructure, technology infrastructure for the time being lack a coherent EU approach to investment. And this must be tackled as quickly as possible, certainly inspired also by what has been done on research infrastructure, but taking into account the specificities of technology infrastructure that cannot be compared to research infrastructure and where the stakeholders are not exactly the same. In this context, we should also take into account that we have a budget issue. I mean, investing in research or technology infrastructure require expensive investments. So it requires to tackle the fragmentation and to ensure a political vision of where we would like to land. We need also to ensure that the current cross-sector and cross-border synergies that remain underused is tackled, because due to this limitation, we are restricting, in reality, access. We are restricting a number of opportunities for potential stakeholders, and we are not tackling a number of regional disparities that remain in Europe. We have to recognize that we have still in Europe complex procedures. And for research and technology infrastructure, what is also needed, but it's also true at a certain extent for the business world, what is needed is a minimum of predictability. And this minimum predictability, this current poor visibility that exists, is not helping to take appropriate decision. And in this context, we should ensure a better governance, but we should also ensure that what are the opportunities and capacities that exist in Europe are well known by the various actors. I mean, I was in Finland a few days ago, visiting VTT. I mean, typically a body which has technology infrastructures. The type of equipment and facilities that they were proposing, notably in the biofood sector, was absolutely unknown by one startup that I met the day after in Slush. And this startup was, of course, not in Finland. In Finland it was known, but this startup was in Italy. But they had no idea that this kind of facility exists and that they could have access. And on this, we should do more. We should ensure that startups and scale-ups have the capacity to access, in fact, to these remarkable facilities that exist in Europe. And I'm sure that you have noted that this was mentioned already in the startup and scale-up strategies that we adopted in May this year, but which was also recalled in this strategy and on which I will come back in a few minutes at the end of the presentation. We have to take into account also that As I said, the world is, and in particular the scientific and technological world, is moving as quickly as never in our history. And this calls for the capacity to be able to upskill, in fact, our infrastructures in their facility equipment, but also in their people. We have to be able to train colleagues in research infrastructure and technology infrastructure at the cutting edge of knowledge. We have to be able also to train colleagues that are able to manage an infrastructure, which is a particular job, which is not to be compared with any other. In a world which is also more and more digital, in a world which is more and more based on data sharing, we have to use AI for our infrastructure in the most relevant way and to strengthen their functionality and resilience. We have to untap this potential as quickly as possible. And as I said, we have to soar research data volume at outpacing our capacity today in order to be able to compete and to have access to the curated and fair data that we need and which are close to our values. So, working on these challenges, we have proposed a block of actions which can be regrouped on the strengthening of the infrastructure through holistic capacity building and mobilizing investment, capacity and investment part. The objective to maximize the potential of digitalization and AI. The objective to bolster accessibility to a continuum of complementary services, best-in-class facilities, and data to drive excellence in science and innovation. The objective to attract talent and to grow talent in Europe and to provide the necessary career pathway to our colleagues. The objective to improve governance, taking into account the specificities, but ensuring also a clear connection between research and technology infrastructure in order to support investment decision and to align priorities. And last but not least, of course, the objective to increase our resilience and autonomy in the context of the competitive race worldwide, and in this context to reinforce our research data sovereignty and to remain at the top of the fight today. I promise I will not go through the 22 actions that we have tabled, otherwise we will spend the whole session on this. But I recommend you to have a look at these 22 actions. I just wanted, nevertheless, to insist maybe on some of them. And on this slide, you have not even the 22. And I promise that I will not go through all the ones that are on these slides neither. Just to insist on some of them. In the first block, the main novelty, which is also part of the proposal for the next framework program, where research and technology infrastructure are under the same pillar and under the same program. One of the most important proposals is the proposal of the Commission to contribute to the building cost of critical new world-class capacities for infrastructures. The idea would be to contribute up to 20% of the CapEx, and I insist on CapEx, the idea is not to cover OpEx, operational expenditure, with the purpose, in fact, to do what? To act as a facilitator, as an accelerator, as an actor that could help, in fact, to speed up the process when it is necessary to develop a new facility in an existing infrastructure, or to develop, in certain cases, why not, a new infrastructure, where by definition it's maybe difficult to find the necessary means at the beginning, and we have experienced this in the past. I remember the long discussions that we had when, for example, we set up ESS in Sweden. The idea here is really to help and to bring, in fact, an additional support that could speed up, act as a bridge financing, if you want, in this context. It's also under the capacities and investment block that we would like to ensure that we introduce some simplification, or maybe also some additional cover in the context of the ERIC regulation. I mean, ERIC has been an incredible vector in order to create and stabilize, in fact, research infrastructure. I mean, one of the speakers afterwards certainly could intervene on this. It proves a certain success. I mean, we have more than 30 ERICs now in Europe. But maybe it is time to see if we could refresh, improve, maybe simplify the current ERIC regulation. And maybe to see how we could make a better bridge with the EDIC, notably in a world which is more and more digital, so a number of possibilities are open there. On the second one, digitization, allow me to say a word on EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud, and where we see the need for further development, not only of EOSC, but also in particular of the EOSC Federation, in order to turn this into something which is more and more concrete now that we have the EU node and the first 13 actors that joined this. It's time to go a step further, and it's time to be even more ambitious for the future. Allow me also in this context to insist on the artificial intelligence ready research data and the importance of the RISE initiative in this context, to which we intend to contribute, and the AI strategy, the AI in science strategy also. On the third block, the accessibility, I already say a word about the necessity to have more integrated and sustainable scheme for accessing to research infrastructure. I just wanted also in this context to say that we are already reflecting on this type of scheme, but even more, we have launched also a call for contribution, and I will say a word in a minute in my conclusion about it. In the fourth block, particular focus on the necessity of training for infrastructure staff, as well as training in open science practices in order to ensure that we continue with our value on open science. On the staff, notably, as I said, as far as the staff concerned by the management of infrastructure is concerned. On the fifth block is absolutely essential if we want to make a change. It's about the governance. As I said, we have already a governance for research infrastructure. We have to build a governance for technology infrastructure, but even more important, we have to ensure a coordination between the two. Because if we work in isolation, I mean, we will create additional barriers that will not be helpful for the community. So we have to recognize the specificities of technology infrastructure. I mean, some of them are totally private. Some of them are including private actors, which is more or less not at all the case in the context of research infrastructure. So by definition, the approach should be different, But nevertheless, in terms of vision, in terms of continuity, in terms of cooperation, we have to ensure this coordination, and this is one of our challenge ahead of us that should be tackled notably in 2026. Last but not least, the international dimension and the resilience. I said already a lot of words about the research data sovereignty issue in Europe. I will not insist. I will just insist on the necessity to develop the necessary capacity for Europe research infrastructure in this context as far as data storage, data access are concerned. And this is something on which we intend to make some proposal relatively soon. All these actions, in fact, are not for midterm. A number of them have already started, and we have already dedicated more than $500 million, exactly 540 million, for the implementation of this strategy this year, next year, and the year after, so from 2025, 2027 in our work program. I'd like to insist in this context, before we move to putting this in the general overview of the various initiatives taken by the Commission in order to reinforce, in fact, our competitiveness and our resilience. I'd like to insist also on the last word, on which people should not be afraid. It's also time for consolidation. We made a lot of improvement as far as research infrastructure is concerned. But now we have not so far from 40 landmarks under S3. We have 34, I do not want to make an error, but I think 34 ERICs. We have, and science is moving so quickly, new technology are coming so quickly, that it may be the time also to sit and to have a look at the situation and to see where we could have synergies, where we could have consolidation, where we could avoid, in fact, a number of overlaps. Some things that we did in the very beginning with S3, with the mapping in 2018, and some things that could help in order to be even more efficient, especially because we are also aware in front of us we will have a lot of investment to be made, and therefore we will have to make appropriate decision. So in this context, of course, we are addressing member states, will be which are also calling for this consolidation in order to be able to go a step further. Now, as I said, these actions are, of course, not isolated. I mean, they are part of a number of other actions. Starting, as I told you already, with the startup and scale-up strategy. I said a few minutes ago that there was a need to ensure a better access to research and technology infrastructure, and this is for this reason that we proposed in the startup and scale-up strategy, but also in the research and technology infrastructure strategy, the need to ensure this access, but also to develop a charter of access for industrial users of this infrastructure. And I will, in the last slide, give you the opportunity to contribute to the call that we launched for collecting your remark on what should be in this strategy. And I will invite you to contribute before the consultation is closed. But before that, other actions, other initiatives or strategies that we have launched are linked with this RTI strategy. The life sciences strategy, where we intend to develop and streamline European research infrastructure to facilitate multi-country clinical trials. The AI in science strategy that I just mentioned again, where we will contribute to raise So RISE, sorry, I'm using too many acronyms. So RISE is a resource for AI in science in Europe. The new name of the initial proposal of the Commission, which was the European Research Council for AI, but this is now called RISE. And there, of course, pooling data, pooling tools and services. I'd like to insist on two other initiatives that will be certainly even more powerful and which will be ACT. So an ACT can be a regulation, can be a directive, but have a more powerful impact on the structuring, in fact, of the ecosystem. The first one which will come is the European Innovation Act, which is foreseen to be published by the Commission for discussion with the Council and the Parliament at the end of March 2026, and where we intend to reinforce access of innovative companies through legislative measures. As far as the ERA, the European Research Area, is concerned, another act is foreseen with a date of publication which is scheduled right after the summer in September of next year, and where the idea would be to further enshrine, in fact, a unified EU single market for research, innovation and technology, as I told you, by aligning R&D investment, by improving research mobility and career, by safeguarding scientific values, and all of this, of course, will have a direct link with what will happen in research and technology infrastructures. As I told you, in this context, we have currently a consultation which is running on a charter for access to research and technology infrastructure for industrial users, including startup and scale-ups. The idea of the charter is really to facilitate access, in fact, to cutting-edge infrastructure for the industry in broad terms, so including also SMEs, startup, scale-up, in order for them to quicker develop, test and validate new products, new technology, and then therefore possibly grow up on their side. So there you see how the interaction with the startup and scale-up strategy is intervening, and how we would like to use the potentials that exist in research and technology infrastructure for the benefit of startup and scale-ups in Europe. I have the benefit to know very well the European Innovation Council because I set it up and I managed it for a number of years. We see that a number of startups in which we have invested, they are looking for this kind of facility, and sometimes it is one of their arguments to move abroad. So I will not give names, but some of them moved outside Europe because they believed that in other places, in other territories, they will find this kind of facility more easily, or they will have access to this kind of facility more easily. So this is why we believe that it is absolutely essential that everybody is aware of this potential, and that this visibility and this principle that will be enshrined in the charter will be there. The survey is open until the 10th of December. You have a QR code, so do not hesitate, have a look, participate. It's very important for us because it will help us to collect anything that is coming from the ground and which will help us to improve our proposal. I was a bit long, but I hope that thanks to this presentation, you have now a better understanding of what we are calling research and technology infrastructure and why they are essential to the European innovation competitiveness. And I will be pleased now to participate to the panel.
Thank you very much, Jean-David. And I should say that this session is being recorded and will be available through all the Euractiv channels. So if you want to go back and have a closer look at some of Jean-David's slides and the QR codes, you can do that after our event today. Now, let me introduce you to our next panelists who are going to maybe tackle some of the challenges that were set out in that opening presentation. Ricardo Migues is head of the Brussels office of INES, that's Portugal's Institute for Systems and Computer Engineering. We also have Nicholas Pade, executive director of the European Marine Biological Resource Centre, EMBRC ERIC, and also Julie Udu, his managing director for European Affairs at CEA, which is the Commissariat à l'énergie atomique et aux énergies alternatives. Thank you all very much for joining. Now, Jean-David has done a lot of the heavy lifting for us here in setting the scene on the panel. But Ricardo, let's hear from the point of view of INES. You've worked the interface of research and technology infrastructures for an innovation policy quite a long, long time. Tell us about how your organisation and organisations like it is going to benefit from the strategy on research and technology innovation and infrastructures, as well as how it can actually contribute to the strategy's success. So both sides of the coin.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you so much to Jean-David for the very enlightening presentation as well, informative. INESC is actually the kind of institution that actually embodies exactly what the new strategy of the Commission for Research and Technology Infrastructures is calling for. Because INESC was founded to actually bridge the knowledge production and go and bring that knowledge into market deployment and market uptake. So this is what the strategy is calling for. INESC has laboratories where researchers actually can be trained. We churn out more than 500 researchers per year for the market at advanced training level. And at the same time, we have laboratories and other infrastructures that also provide crucial support to companies and also provide crucial support to fundamental research. So INESC has all this pipeline, and our researchers can then execute their projects, execute their fundamental research, their basic research. They can also test, they can also validate, and they can also support the startups and also the scale-ups external that come to the institution, and that are based on the deep tech solutions that the institution creates. Now, what makes all of this work is the connection between the pieces, and this is why the strategy is really important for us. Because by connecting, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires a certain institutional culture, it requires processes, it requires different skill sets, and the 22 measures of the strategy go in that direction. Let me emphasize only a few to give you an example. For example, and I'm going to package some of the actions into some headlines. For example, the capacity building from the first 1 to 8 actions of the strategy. Capacity building and financial mobilization. We need to heavily invest, and the strategy acknowledges that. We need to heavily invest. But we need the public investment in order to de-risk the private investment. We need access. And we need access in a way that facilitates that a startup, for example, that wants to, that needs to access something in microelectronics, in IMEC, in TNO, or in INESC, in one of our clean rooms, does not have to go through 3 different processes with 3 different costs, with three different. We need to facilitate and eliminate bureaucracy, and we also need to use properly the infrastructures as talent attraction, as Jean-David has also said, talent development, and that's why the strategies focus on career development, on training, on the recognition of the technicians, of the managers, like Jean-David just emphasized, is very, very important. And finally, the strategy also calls for this holistic approach. And this holistic approach is really, really crucial in our point of view. And I will go more in detail in the next phase of the discussion. But the strategy already calls for that. Now, the success of this will depend on implementation and will depend on how good the quality of the instrument design will be. Now, how can we help as the largest research and technology organization in Portugal? Well, we can help by leading operational pilots. We can help by providing a very honest feedback on what works and what does not work because of our proximity to both academia and industry. We can help with community leadership, ecosystem development. And of course, we can demonstrate by the mere fact that we exist and we make it work that this approach is correct.
Well, thank you. Nicholas, coming on to you and your organisation, which is a multi-country presence and is contributing to long-term ecosystem observation. It's the same question, really. How does the strategy help you? How do you, in turn, help the strategy? And it'll be no surprise, Julie, the same question to you.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting us here today. It's a privilege to be here. So we are one of the examples, really, of what Jean-David was just talking about. We are one of the European Research Infrastructure Consortia, so we're one of these ERICs. And so to help you understand, really, the scale of some of these facilities, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at EMBRC. So we are distributed infrastructure, so we're not based on a single site. We are actually based across 80 sites in 10 member states. We have sites that go from northern Norway to eastern Mediterranean. We have experimental facilities in every major regional sea in Europe except for the Black Sea. The infrastructure is based on the marine stations and marine institutes in Europe. So these have been historical, important sites for researchers to access the sea, the environment, marine organisms, to be able to study them in situ and understand what happens there. So our offer of service and our activities are actually extremely broad. We range from giving people access that come on site to be able to work on the organisms. We have cultured organisms. We have model organisms. We can collect in situ organisms. They can do in situ experimentation. There's advanced technology and imaging and so on. Everything is available in situ in proximity to the resources for the researchers. So it's a huge amount of facilities that are available, and these are really interesting, particularly to early career scientists and startup companies that don't necessarily have access to a lot of this equipment, and very often very specialized equipment. So we have equipment that you will find in other laboratories as well, but there's an important expertise attached to how we use them on marine organisms and how they do. On top of that, we also have some very specialized experimental facilities like mesocosms that allow us to study ecosystems over long term. We have experimental facilities for marine heat waves. We have also recently developed an experimental facility for understanding how marine noise is affecting marine organisms. So this, coupled with platforms on bioprospecting to look for novel products and aquaculture, really means that as an ERIC we can span a very, very large amount of the marine research that goes on in Europe. So the focus really for what we do goes on ecosystems, how we use sustainably the environment, and how we get new products out of it and ensure that the ecosystem services we depend upon continue to function the way that we want them to. Now, the strategy that has come out is extremely welcome, and we're really happy to see that there is a recognition of the enormous importance of these facilities to European research. I think they've been absolutely crucial in structuring communities, establishing collaborations across countries. And so this sort of strategy really shows that this has been seen, this has had a real impact, and so there's a willingness to continue that investment. Like Ricardo, I'd like to just focus on a few of them because otherwise it'd be a very long intervention. And so, of course, the investment in infrastructure is absolutely crucial. Things are going incredibly fast at the moment. Research infrastructures are supposed to be supporting the cutting-edge research. So everything that's products of tomorrow, research of tomorrow, we have to be ready to support. And these sort of investments are then not trivial and need to happen quickly. And so this is an important instrument in mobilizing and motivating the countries to come together and invest in these new facilities. The second one I want to pick up is the investment in people. So we're not just a collection of physical facilities or technologies. They're all manned and equipped by very, very talented people. These are people that have spent 10, 15, 20 years working on these technologies, these organisms. This is an incredible added value that we add to the user's research in terms of optimization of instruments, better experimental procedures, and so on. And this allows us to continue that. It allows us to continue to retain the talent so we don't lose it. And so this is an incredibly important resource for the infrastructures and therefore also for the community. And finally is the access. I mean, without access to the facilities, well, you know, the impact is limited. And so the access is crucial that this is maintained because very often what we see from the transnational access that is funded is it very often catalyzes new science. new ideas before they're mainstream, before they're accepted as important topics. It allows them to collect preliminary data that then they can go for much bigger investments for afterwards. And second of all, about half of our users are early career scientists. They come in, they use facilities they don't have at home. They learn new skills. They leave better equipped and also networked with new researchers and new careers. So for me, these are really three of the absolutely crucial parts of the strategy for the infrastructures.
And you're sending people out to take part in the blue economy, which we know has huge potential for Europe and untapped potential in some cases. Julie, let's come to you. And I know you're bringing together quite a broad portfolio of research and technology capacities. What's your perspective on the strategy? How can you feed back into it? Or similar organizations to yours, how would you advise?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Jean-David, for the presentation. I'm very happy to be here. And I first must explain that the CA is a big research and technology organization, and that we operate many research infrastructure that are quite famous in Europe, but we also have a lot and numerous technology infrastructure. Just to give you an idea, we made an inventory of technological infrastructure for advanced material, and we have at CA 35 of it just for advanced material. That means that there are numerous, and most of them could be shared and are already shared in some EU projects with other partners, either other RTOs, research technology organization, but also industry, SMEs, startups. So definitely CA sees this strategy very positively. It's of course a great initiative, and before that we were lacking a clear and targeted policy for those infrastructure. And this is a really welcome, especially for technology infrastructure that could now work together and in synergy with research infrastructure. As said, in the strategy, these two types of infrastructure should, on one hand, be considered as such. They are different, but also, on the other hand, they should be articulated, as you mentioned, Jean-David, because their complementarity will constitute part of the success of the strategy and its implementation, and will be the asset for Europe in the global competition. There is a growing consensus that they are essential, but their cost is escalating, and no individual member state now, for some big ones, can afford to invest alone in all required infrastructure in all different sectors. That's why I think there is really a need for a European approach, and this will be the added value that brings the strategy in. That will allow to coordinate priorities, to make some strong choices in the sector we really need to put funding in. Concerning especially investments, this is I think we need to avoid sprinkling of funding, and this is where we need a simplified and straightforward governance. This is part of the objective of the strategy, and really we will need this governance to make the strong choice in line with the EU priorities and strategic ones for the year to come. In RI, in research infrastructure, we already have S3, as you mentioned. But for TIs, we need another governance, articulate maybe with R3, but another one where we will have the industry on board. And this is the very crucial point. If we don't have the industry on board, we will miss something. We will not have their needs into the priorities. And so for this, maybe we can build on already well-established partnerships that exist, public-private partnership for different sectors, where we already have the universities in the RTOs, the research organization in general, and also the industry and the European Commission, of course. So this could be one of the vectors we can use for setting the next EU strategic priorities on the research and technology infrastructure. And to finish, let me just give you an example. At CA, we have a very recent technology infrastructure, a pilot line called FAMES by Cereality, which provides a complete set of technologies for developing chips and advanced chips, increasing performance and lowering the power for the consumption of the circuits, electronic circuits. And this line, together with 3 others within Europe, in Belgium, in Italy, in Germany, is now open to all stakeholders of the electronic value chain. That means both research teams, obviously, but also SMEs, startups, and large industry groups. And this access will give Europe the opportunity to test and explore different range of microelectronics. But now they exist. We have to open access and to build on these pilot lines and to make the best use of it for the competitiveness of Europe in microelectronics. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Julie. And I thank all 3 of you for setting the scene for us with your different organisations. And I'm feeling a great deal of positivity, which must be music to your ears, Jean-David. Now, I mean, we know that in her State of the Union address, in her CERN address, Ursula von der Leyen underlined the importance of science and technology, but also said that Europe must act with greater ambition. And that's greater ambition on a world stage. So how are we going to leverage these infrastructures to really retain global leadership or gain global leadership on big science, but also to win the race, and it is probably a race, on emerging technologies, because we haven't always won on these?
All of this is in reality about competitiveness, to be a bit brutal maybe, but at the end of the day, if we want to be able to compete worldwide, we need to have research infrastructure and technology infrastructures that are at the cutting edge of the knowledge. And because today, economy is, and the economic battle is mainly driven, in fact, by this technology race. And we have there a very important asset, as I said. I mean, we have been able to build instruments that are allowing us to see things that our eyes cannot see. We are now able, notably in the health dimension or in the environment dimension, we are able to see things that, but at the very nitty-gritty levels that our eyes also cannot see. And this in a world where new technology like quantum, AI, the power of semiconductors are there, I mean, is accelerating everything. So first, we need to ensure that we have in Europe this kind of facility on the research side, but also on the technology side, first thing. Second thing, we talked a little bit about data management and AI. We need to provide the necessary tools and schemes for this research infrastructure to use as far as possible this new technology. I should say these new technologies in this context, in order to maintain their position and to be able to compete. And this is typically where, in particular, the European Open Science Cloud can play a key role in order to federate this, and the RISE initiative can play a key role. Third thing, and it was said also by my colleagues panelists before, build on talents. I mean, as Nicolas said rightly, I mean, in this infrastructure, you have incredibly talented people. Not only because they know the equipment, they know the research area in which they are working, but as you said rightly, they have been able to develop also between them, and you said something I think very important, on which I didn't say a word, and I thank you to say it. In reality, the huge majority of our research infrastructure today are distributed. And this network, beyond the distributed link, is also a network of people, not only of physical instrument on which we must absolutely build. And the combination of the two should be offered to the external world, I would say, to the stakeholders, to the startup, to the scale-up. And all the strategy, in fact, to answer your question, is built on this. In order to remain within the world's top research infrastructure or technology infrastructure in the world, I say it's sometimes not very popular, but we have to invest. It will cost a lot of money, but we have to invest. If we don't invest, we will not be able to compete. So this is why we propose this initiative of the up to 20%. Second, we need to continue to have a better idea of the roadmap of the existing infrastructures.
Let me interrupt you very briefly, because I've just seen the questions come in from Gail Decroix saying, why limit the capital expenditure to 20%?
Yeah.
How is this limit set?
Why it's limited to 20?
Yeah.
I mean
Will it be enough? Also, they're asking, is it linked to state aid? Just
no,
since you're on the subject.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, as I said, our role here is to play as a catalyzer, as a facilitator to help. But the main investment will be made by whom? Let's be very clear. And I will take the easiest part, the research infrastructure part. Because in fact, here you have only two main sources. The Commission, if we provide up to 20%, and the member states. So it's a decision to be taken by member states, and then it will be fueled maybe by organizations such as CEA or others. But it's a decision that will be taken at the level of government. So the reason why we propose this is in order to say, if there is a need for 10% or 15% to accelerate the process, to make the bridge, to ensure we are there. So it's an incentive, let's say it this way, and no link with state aid in this area.
Thank you. Let's come back to some of those challenges that we saw on the slide earlier, Ricardo. One of the challenges was, I saw, fragmentation. Now, this strategy is trying to streamline things, is trying to create a coherent single ecosystem, with strategic steering and so on. Tell me, from your perspective, talk to us about how we break down remaining silos and, if you like, barriers between communities, so that we've got something that can really deliver. Briefly. I know that's a big question.
I will try to be brief, but I'm going to have to start by saying that this is the core challenge that we have. And by being the core challenge, we have to say that research and technology infrastructures are complementary, necessarily. They have always been. This is not new. Technology infrastructure was not invented yesterday, even though they were not recognized at European level. But they also live somehow in different worlds so far. So what I would like to start by saying very briefly, Jennifer, is that Jean-David said ESRI started 25, I think, no, 23, 24, I don't know, 2002, so years ago. And now we are recognizing technology infrastructures more formally at European level, because that issue of the different levels of funding and the role of the different levels of funding is very much related to the answer to that question. But because I have to be brief, I'm not going to go into detail. And now, what the direction of travel, I would say, and this is to paint a kind of direction of travel. The direction of travel is that of the strategy, really. And I'm saying that because I truly believe in that, is of a research and technology infrastructure continuum. And in order to do that, we need to, first and foremost, avoid funding fragmentation. And so the first thing I would emphasize is that we have been funding according to typology of entity. And like Jean-David likes to say, sometimes it's not popular to say this, but we should be funding, we should be thinking of how to fund what is actually done, the service and the activity. Because we have infrastructures that actually do all sorts of things. And then there are different gray areas in the middle. There are research infrastructures that only do research. There are technology infrastructures that only do demonstration or testing. And then there is a number of entities in the middle. So what it matters is how they contribute to the pipeline of research and innovation and to the competitiveness that we need to solve those obstacles. Now, there are other issues, to be very brief, which are different governance cultures in research and technology infrastructures. And also a certain historical specialization of the communities that come from that relate to different metrics as well. Peer review versus other type of metrics that orient and guide technology infrastructures. So to finalize my answer, because I think I emphasized what I really wanted to emphasize in a way, I would like to say that there is also a geographic issue there, because there is at the same time a concentration and a fragmentation in Europe, whereby we have a huge concentration. It is the same effect more or less in S3 and in the technology infrastructures and in clusters. A huge concentration of infrastructures in a certain number of countries, whereas the periphery struggles somehow to act and to link up to it sometimes. And I'm talking specifically about Eastern Europe and Southern Europe in this respect. And so what solutions do we have? Well, we should focus, as I said, on funding the activity provided, and not necessarily on the typology of infrastructure. We should also streamline governance, and Jean-David has emphasized that. Which RIs and TIs complement each other, because we need to respond to what is needed. Where capacity gaps exist, how to align the investment timelines. It's crucial, because otherwise we will not be able to address this. But we also have to harmonize metrics, as I say. This is very, very important. The only thing that exists is what we measure. And what we need is to harmonize what we measure as well, because otherwise we don't have a balanced scorecard that rewards both infrastructure operators, serving both frontier science and the innovation capacity that they provide. And finally, there is a lot more than this, but finally, create joint strategic planning cycles between both. Make them articulate. This has been said. It's never too much to emphasize. And this has to be complemented with connectivity related with access. So bridge the different actors in the ecosystem. Digital ecosystem is increasingly important. The mapping that you have said sometimes is very unpopular, because we have had mapping exercises that utterly failed in the past, but we now can have the creativity and the resources to do it differently and make it work. And the dialogue and capacity building of training, that includes the training between and the capacity building of the people for the talent at all levels, not only of the researchers, but also of the incredibly talented people that we need to manage and to deal with IP, etc. And a spirit of agility and focus. And I'll stop here.
Julie, one of the word, as Jean-David said, is competitiveness. So let's talk a bit about startups, scale-ups, industry. And you've been successful at CEA in bringing the industry on board and really showing the value of the infrastructures. How can that be capitalized on? How do we move forward with that? And what should be the role of EU policy?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, because of their high construction costs, usually research and technology infrastructure are not worthy and not affordable, especially for SMEs or startups, and but even for bigger industries that will not need them forever, so they won't build it. That's why you often find those infrastructure within research organizations, even if some are private. But the advantage of having it in research organization is that often you have this possibility of access and shared services of R&D, where you can co-develop some innovation. And for this, there is a clear need for public investment of this type of facilities. And I would underline that even for technological infrastructure that are meant to support industry, they cannot exist without public support. Because exactly for what I said before, they can be, they are costly, and we at CEA can then work with our startups or other startups that will need this infrastructure for maturation of their technology and so on. So we are not commercial providers, and we cannot expect that the cost of the technology infrastructure will be paid by revenues or whatever. And that's why we need this support to help the industry, startups, scale-ups, and so on. Just to add also that for scale-ups, the TIs are also essential to de-risk the technology transfer. That's where we can help them when they are facing some problems with scaling up their technology. And for this, I want to take the word of continuum that you mentioned, Ricardo. This is very important. This is how the technology transfer and innovation work through collaboration with all the stakeholders. I must say here that focusing the EU R&D policy only on basic research on one hand, like ERC, and on the other hand on startups with the ERC would be a mistake. We need in the middle for the continuum the collaborative research, and this collaborative research will use the research and infrastructure as a tool. And to finish on the question, what could be the role of the EU policy? First of all, simply, I would say that we have to implement the strategy, and that's it. And as mentioned also in the strategy and in the expert group report, set up of an effective governance, I think we all say that, will coordinate all the stakeholders and will really be the added value of the EU approach on this research and technological infrastructure. And second, I think having a large funding envelope, this is a message would be also good to avoid competition between the research infrastructure and technology infrastructure. We need both.
Thank you. Briefly, quickly.
just only 1 minute. No, I think Julie said something very important. We will have also to think about the business model of these infrastructures, because I mean, by nature, they are different. But we have to look at them in order to be as efficient as possible as far as investments are concerned. Because the solution will not come only and for each necessary new facility from public means. It may come also from private means. I mean, some infrastructure may generate revenues, not all of them, but so we will have to think about it, just to in continuity with what you said.
Nicolas, a specific question that's quite good for you with your background is global challenges. So things like tackling climate change, global health, feeding us for the future. How can the research infrastructures really help deliver on those big challenges that we all face? And how does that then feed back into, if you like, European sovereignty, European security?
Yeah, I mean, on that topic, it's a challenging time at the moment. I think, what's been happening over the last year, and so in terms of changing partnerships and withdrawal of certain partners, and I think in general we see a bit of a retraction in many parts of the world, and more inward-looking rather than outward-looking. I should say that, I mean, from our perspective, and I think most of my research infrastructure colleagues would really agree with me on this, we are very firm believers in this culture of collaboration that we've been building over the past few decades. I also think we have really seen the return of that change in community. Going from competition to collaboration has really allowed us to move much, much, much faster. And so to see these traditional bonds starting to break is quite worrying, because, like you mentioned, I mean, a lot of the challenges that we are addressing on a larger scale, whether it's climate change, whether it's global health, food production, food security, are not a problem for one region or one country. These are global issues. We don't live in isolated pockets of systems that don't interact. They're all heavily linked. So by not pooling resources, we're going back to fragmentation, which we just addressed as being a big problem. Now, I think we are fortunate in Europe that we have really been investing very heavily also for a long time in our research and in our research infrastructures, which is allowing us to really not just be a participating actor, but really play a leading role. And the infrastructures are key here because they've allowed the European countries to come together and collaborate and work very effectively together on these joint topics, which require a scale of research, not just in investment, but geographically as well. And I think the infrastructures have a really important role in building community and bringing people together. And I mean, community is a key part in the collaboration. Many of us work together since decades because we like it as well. And this is one of the strongest bonds we can have in terms of ensuring the research. But because we have these infrastructures that are well supported, it also means that we haven't just been passively following what's been going on. We've been major actors in international programs as well. And from a marine perspective, a really obvious one is the Euro-Argo program, for example. It's a global endeavor. We have over 4,000 floats in the sea at any time. And Europe has been one of the really important leaders in this after the United States. And so it's important that we have this capability because it means we can continue beyond what's happening now. From our own perspective, we do the same in terms of genomics observation. Our colleagues in the biomedical research infrastructures do this as well. We heard also about the importance of data. I mean, data is the topic in research today. In some ways, it's a currency. And we were just talking about values and numbers, what we can measure. We house a lot of our own data. And what I think is a crucially important part is we have our own rules around data sovereignty, about open science, about open access. These are principles that are incredibly important, I think, to Europe as a whole, not just to science. And so it's important that we maintain that, and that allows access to that data as well for ourselves, but also for our collaborators. So that means we are also transitioning into positions of leadership now, because we have these infrastructures which are present on the international stage. We are also in some ways a hub where we can do a lot of collaboration. We're neutral. We're not in a government. We're research infrastructures. We don't have a political position. We can interact with countries all over, regardless of policy. So we're also a tool in terms of international science. On the data side, on the research side, we help to set standards. We're a real key player on this. This ensures not only our own sovereignty, but it also ensures that on a global research agenda, we can also be a lighthouse in terms of what the values we believe in, how research should be done, that should be open, it should have ethical limits, it should be done in a certain way. And so I think it's important that the infrastructures act in this way and act as a lighthouse for these principles.
Some really excellent points and ones I wish I had more time to reflect on. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but what you're alluding to a lot of is what I think also the letter report presented as the fifth freedom. And I just, Julie, very, very quickly, we see, as Nicolas said, the, contraction or inward looking from certain parts of the world. The US is seeing many researchers looking for a new home. How can we make this so-called fifth freedom work for Europe?
I think this is something Jean-David mentioned. Simply already having this inventory, cartography, catalog of our infrastructure will be really, I think, an asset in demonstrating how well equipped we are in Europe and what we can propose to researchers by offering them these instruments, that can make with which they can make excellent science. I think it would be really an important step to attract them and make them come to Europe, I really think.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple of audience questions before we wrap up. Ricardo, perhaps your thoughts on how can long-term investment planning be coordinated, taking into account the life cycle of infrastructures? Any thoughts on that, or to build on what your colleagues have already been saying?
Well, the long term.
Thank you for the solution.
Exactly. No pressure. No, the long term. It is actually very crucial that we have that we pay attention to the whole life cycle of the research and the technology infrastructure itself. But it is also crucial that we do that increasingly in alignment with their purpose and the service that they are providing. And so that is something that we have been doing in a very in separate worlds, and now we need to start doing it together, bring those two worlds together. But we also need, as Jean-David said, to think about the business models and the funding models of the research and technology infrastructures. I am a strong believer that public support is absolutely crucial. I am also a strong believer that without the public support we cannot de-risk and increase the private funding. But I am also a strong believer that the private funding might be even not only needed, but also a solution to increase the relation between the infrastructure and the industrial world in certain contexts and in certain territories. Now, this does not mean that sustainability should come from only private funding, not at all. But this means that this bringing together a very strong capacity of public funding, of implementation, of synergistic implementation at European, national and regional levels, with also the private contribution is increasingly important. But then again, of course, we need to look at specific sectoral needs, specific territorial and ecosystem needs.
Jean-David, a specific question for you from Kieran Carey, quite specific. The 10th framework programme is to be dual use by default and even by design in parts. How is that incorporated into the strategy? Which actions are intended to support research security in a dual use context?
So this is quite recent, as you know, because the recent mini omnibus, sorry for the jargon, on dual use and defense is coming to a final agreement, let's say, and an endorsement in the very next weeks, hopefully. But there is an agreement between the institutions. We have to recognize that a number of technology, by nature, even if it is not, they have not been developed as such at the very beginning, may be dual. It is the way it is. I mean, we are recognizing it more and more because of the particular geopolitical environment in which we are working today. But in reality, it was already the case before. So to take this into account and to recognize that by definition you may have an advancement in the technology if you go via the civilian part or if you go via the defense part with a dual use application is indeed for the benefit of both dimensions. Having said that, it will call for being very cautious as far as you said security issues are concerned. I mean, with whom you will work, with which like-minded countries or like-minded organization you will work. I mean, we have so many experience in the last years that we have to be even more cautious than ever. But this will apply by definition in the evolution of science in any case. So is it the case in this strategy? I mean, in the strategy, we have not per se taken into account the dual use because by definition, the dual use issue is an horizontal question. So we have not tackled this. But in the context of the future framework, as you said, I mean, it is proposed as an horizontal approach that will require indeed to clarify a number of security issues.
Thank you, audience, for the challenging questions today. We've just got a minute left, so I'm going to ask you to wrap up in one word or one phrase. What should be the top priority for the development of Europe's research and technology infrastructure ecosystem? What's your key one-word takeaway? Julie.
I will say governance, strategy choice, and money.
One phrase, okay. Nicholas.
Well, I think all the paths eventually lead back to funding, so I can only agree with my colleague on this topic, but I really want to insist on the access. I mean, this is so important. The amount of research that generates the facilities that become accessible, we talked about why is Europe attractive. We have all of this amazing stuff that many places can only dream of. The access is going to really make a big difference in the utilization of those and the outcomes.
Ricardo?
We could say money, we could say continuum, but I'm going to bet on coherence.
So, Jean-David, very easy job you have ahead of you.
Yeah, of course, indeed.
Are there any words left?
No, words. I think, I mean, the essential was said, and honestly, I think that everything is covered by the governance issue. I mean, the governance issue is covering the typical action, access, is covering the issue of financing, is covering. So governance will be absolutely key for me. And this means that we have to deliver.
Well, indeed. We will be watching you and holding you to account. Thank you all very much indeed for your great input today. Thank you very much for joining us here in Euractiv and online. And of course, remember, you can find out more about future Euractiv events by going to events.euractiv.com. And you can also follow along using the hashtag EA Debates. You'll find plenty of things happening there. And again, this event is recorded, so you can check back and go through Jean-David's slides at your leisure. Big round of applause, please, for our panellists, and have a great day.